Good morning. Not legal advice. Like, subscribe, share. Please do so. I spend a lot of time on these, obviously, and the issues that I talk about. So I'd be happy if you let other people know about it, share, like, subscribe, comment, question, all that stuff. I'm going to talk today with a two-parter. First one we're going to do is we're going to do a GTII, and then the second one we're going to do is an Alpine. It should be noted that notwithstanding whatever I say about GTII, that as of yesterday, there were still people interested in pursuing it in some manner with full disclosure, the board leaving, etc. But there was somebody who knows all the details because we spoke about it and was still interested. So that's kind of in the background. But notwithstanding that, I feel it's an obligation to disclose what I know and what's public at this point in time in 10Ks and otherwise. So today we're going to go a two-parter. We're going to start off with the bad, and then we'll do the good. So first we'll start off with the bad. And before I get into that, of course, wanted to address a couple of things. I heard there's a huge uptick in burglaries and auto burglaries where crooks cut through the soft top of convertibles. Police spokesman said that the crime is through the roof. Politicians in the US are kind of like British teeth. Some of them are very sharp, some of them are white, and most of them are crooked. And last but not least, how does a lawyer sleep? First he lies on one side, then he lies on the other side. All right, so we did that. Now going into GTII. So again, like I said, yesterday at 6 p.m., about 6 p.m. Pacific, would have been Eastern time. Yeah, Eastern time. Had a conversation with a executive who's had dealings with GTII, is aware of all the shenanigans that have gone on. And he indicated, notwithstanding all the shenanigans, which kind of surprised me, but I pressed him on this, and I felt comfortable in his response after pressing him, that with full disclosure, no matter what happened, if everything's disclosed so that they know what are the problems and they can deal with the problems, and if existing management leaves, then they would be still interested in doing a transaction with GTII, and they have some kind of transaction that they would do. So notwithstanding whatever I say, that's still the position. But everybody's got to know what's going on at GTII before they invest or to make an investment decision. I don't think it's fair otherwise. So I'm going to kind of bring you up to speed up through yesterday and any changes that happened to GTII. So, and just kind of let you know, I've reached out to management probably 100 times, given them an exit path at every moment. So even yesterday, when I disclosed to them the issues about the accounting, again, I said, here, I'm giving you a way out. Leave. We can work this out. No response of any kind. So I would guess, and this is my speculation, that at some point in time, everybody's being super cautious because there's concern, probably amongst all members, of potential criminal misconduct and that they might end up in jail. That's the only thing I can surmise from the way they've approached. And just to kind of give you a summary of how we got to where we are today, I approached them originally being management, because I'd heard from several sources, principals, that they were pissing off people and killing deals, senior management. In other words, deals would be presented and senior management would find some way to kill the deal or to delay or to cause that principal to spend money. And in the end, pissed them off. And then I got involved because of that. So I intervened. And then I was told that the 10K would describe this, take care of all this. And I was specifically told the 10K would be filed on or before March 31st. There was a lot of interaction in that time period, but no concrete information provided. And March 31st came and no 10K. A delay was sought, I think, April 1. That was through April 16th. The financials came out. They were extremely, at best, suspicious. There was substantial difference between the 2022 financials and the 2023 financials. It looked like a travesty, honestly. It showed that millions of shares had been diverted, increased dilution from 260 million shares to 370 million shares, suspicious, I put that in quotation marks, expenditures of large amounts of cash, huge distributions to directors, large salaries to the two employees, increase in losses from 13 million to 87 million with no revenue. So at first blush, it looks like an absolute ripoff. Honestly, that's what I concluded when I saw it, and compared to 2022, I thought, how could you not explain the changes and what has occurred in this terrible financial statement? And then I thought about it, how would somebody be able to sign off on a financial statement like this without any explanation? That's what occurred to me. So I tried to get that explanation multiple times, could not get anything. The CEO has failed to explain anything. Hasn't talked about the huge dilution, the diversion of shares, zero production, and claims by many principals that management was trying not to do the deals. And just a reminder that the board was extremely elderly, maybe had different interests at heart, but were pretending or maintaining that they were interested in doing a deal, and that was the mission statement of GTII. Then I discovered that the company had been downlisted in April 23rd, 2023. That was, I guess, notice was provided in May, based on inaccurate or misleading disclosures of insider transactions or beneficial ownership. At the same time, and seemingly the cause of this downlisting, apparently based upon information received, it related to one of the executives of GTII. I'll let you guess who that executive might be, giving a family member a sufficient number of shares or selling a sufficient number of shares to permit the buying of property, real property in California. And it appears that that property perhaps was bought in 2021 in Northern California, and that property should be our property, either the property of GTII or the property of GTI retail shareholders, if that allegation is true. Of course, I presented that allegation to management. They didn't respond to that either, didn't deny that. Yeah, by the way, they have not denied anything that I've said to this point in time. But it appeared there had been some additional shenanigans going on with shares being moved to possibly family members and then real property being done, and that's diverted from GTII. So I think at this point in time, senior management had other things in mind besides retail and may not even been mentally competent, in my opinion, and they were ripping everybody off. So that's how we get to yesterday. So I believe it was a complete scam, notwithstanding that there wouldn't be people that would still be willing to do deals with GTII because of the concentrated short position of Alpine. Still there, still an enticement. Then Friday comes, and we get the news that BF Borgers, known to be a sham audit mill, agreed to cease and desist doing business further, and they were huge in terms of their position. They accepted a $12 million fine, and the principal, Benjamin Borgers, Borgers, agreed to a $2 million fine and agreed to cease practicing accounting. So they basically shut their business down. They had been investigated for 2.5 years from January 2021 through June of 2023. A sampling of papers had been examined, and it was determined that literally hundreds of filings were false. They weren't at standards that were required of professionals. They made up work papers. They took documents, redated them. They fabricated audit documentation, false scheduling of meetings. Appears to be a complete scam. So as a result, they agreed to cease doing business, accepted the fines, etc. And they're, complete, in my opinion, complete scumbags, and perhaps they will end up in jail. In fact, if they're ripping people off, committing securities fraud, etc., I think that's where they're going to end up. And perhaps they did a plea deal. Perhaps they're going to rat on some companies where the officers were aware of what they were doing. So bring it now to GTII. January 2023, GTII gets rid of its existing auditors. March 1, I believe, they hire Borgers, the company, the sham audit mill company that ceased doing business yesterday. That was hired by David Reichman as the CEO. Now, his business, as it turns out, Mr. Reichman's business, and again, he is both the CEO, the CFO, and the chief accounting officer of GTII. His business was tax consulting and management. And that was his background when Borgers' firm was hired. So January 2023, they fired their existing accounting firm leaves, which is a red flag every time that happens. They hire Borgers, who's a sham and literally looks like they engage in criminal conduct well beyond just GTII. And Reichman, the CEO of GTII, is an expert in tax and holds the chief accounting officer title at GTII. Then in April, we have the downlisting. We have the issuance of a dividend. And recall, the dividend was not cleanly issued too, apparently, because they checked the wrong box. Apparently, that created a shell company inadvertently. Then they were required to comply with certain rules to get the dividend issued. Some brokers are claiming they're not going to issue the dividend because if you check that shell company box, then you have certain obligations to comply with, including full disclosure to all investors. And this action happened in 2023, where they got downlisted. They certainly did not give full disclosure to investors. So brokers appear to be holding back based upon that and other things. So if you look at the 2022 financials and you compare them to the 2023 financials, they don't look at all alike. The numbers are dramatically different, but they were both prepared by the new accounting firm Borgers, with the obviously assistance of the CEO and CEO, and suggest radically different financial settings without any explanation. I wondered, how could anyone sign off on these financials without a note or explanation? My opinion, based on everything, it appears that there has been a crime committed to retail investors as orchestrated by senior management. That's the only conclusion you can draw based upon the non-response and non-denial and continuing non-denial by senior management. At least that's the conclusion I have drawn based upon the contact. I've asked them repeatedly for any explanation, but no response from anyone. One thing I can presume is that GTII management and perhaps their agents are just too concerned about going to jail. Again, this will not stop people from going into GTII. In other words, I've heard it directly from the horse's mouth, but we need full disclosure and the departure of all these, I'm going to call them scumbags. When I started down this path, I did not intend anyone to go to jail. The way GTII has screwed retail, I have a different mindset today. The SEC has received complaints about GTI, and originally, I think my concern was about getting a deal done, but the complaints that were made related to the looting of company assets, the downlisting, dilution, the misappropriation, etc. I can't disclose and will not disclose the name of the parties who made those complaints unless they tell me otherwise or change their mind. And if anybody else does and does file a complaint, please let me know, and I will keep it secret or announce it depending on what you want done. But I'm happy to receive that information. At some point, and I would understand if it's anyone, I would expect some GTII shareholders to go to the FBI, but I'm not directing that. But you know, if enough people get screwed, enough people get pissed, and I've spoken to enough people that are pissed, somebody's going to go. And I, you know, based upon what is suggested without any defense to what the accusations are, despite repeated requests, it just sounds like somebody's going to go to jail. On top of that, in the past week, I've spoken with counsel in Nevada where GTII is incorporated. This particular counsel had several run-ins with Mr. Reichman. He related several instances where GTI management, and in particular the CEO, tried to screw groups of investors who had certain deals with GTII for shares, had problems dealing with Reichman, had to sue him in Nevada, and eventually the attorney indicated that Reichman relented. He had no flattering things to say about Reichman. In fact, I haven't heard anybody with flattering things to say about Reichman, other than that he has a bloated ego. He may lack competency. He's doing things for probably improper purposes. He may be diverting assets, etc. That's all I've heard. So again, that's the story. That's where GTII is today. And if you invest, you should know that entirety. But on the flip side, you should know also there's still people that are interested in coming in and buying out GTII or doing a deal with GTII. And because of the concentrated short position, if they do, people think, and this is not financial advice, that there will be some type of squeeze. And I don't think anything I've said changes that based upon my communication. But in terms of the existing management, it is a disaster. And those people have to go. They either can go voluntarily, or unfortunately, I think what's going to happen is they're going to go involuntarily, and their new home may not be to their liking. So again, this has nothing to do with the Alpine nor the short squeeze issues. In fact, you know, I kind of think that if in fact management left, that would trigger the shorts to cover, because they would be concerned that new management would come in, do a deal, and GTII would be off to the races. So I think the departure of, I'm going to call them scumbags at GTII, is the most essential point to move forward in a positive way. And I will deal with the Alpine side of this in a separate video that I'll put out in the next hour or so. That'll kind of give you a different side of this and say why Alpine status eventually will be positive for GTII. And that's kind of it. So hopefully that provides a little content about where we are. That took you up till yesterday, and my discussions with a principal, along with the accounting issues. And I hope that, and I know some people are afraid that by making this public, it's going to impact the stock. Listen, all this is public. The 10K is public. The issue about the audit is public. These guys can't hide anymore. And whether people decide to invest or not, it's based on public information. And I believe that everybody has a right to know material information. Even if it's not good, they have a right to know. Because some people may want to sell, some people may want to buy, and they should know what they're doing. And the fact that management hasn't disclosed this is a crime, in my opinion. So that's where we are. Next video, I'll give you the Alpine side of things, and we'll go from there. Be well, take care, talk to you soon.